Hey everybody. So I was going to wait to do this video until after the season, but now I've been thinking about it for really a few weeks now, and I decided, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just do it, and I am fully prepared. I know I'm going to get plenty of people who disagree with me on this. I'm going to get plenty of hate in the comment section for this. But I truly believe that Mike Babcock is the most overrated coach in the NHL right now. And quite honestly, I don't think it's really close. Mike Babcock is thought of as this generational, incredible coach. And people seem to think that like he's this generation's Scotty Bowman, or he's some all-time great legendary NHL coach. And really, when you look into it, I don't agree with that at all. What has he done that really warrants this kind of attention and this kind of hype surrounding his name? Like when you hear the name Mike Babcock, people are like in awe, like he's the greatest coach in the NHL, and it's just not the case. This is a guy who has won one Stanley Cup. He has won the Stanley Cup once, with a very, very good Red Wings team in 2008. Now, he certainly deserves credit for that. Yes, that team was absolutely loaded. That team was loaded and should have won the Stanley Cup. But as we saw with the Tampa Bay Lightning this year, just because you're loaded does not mean that you necessarily win the cup. So Babcock deserves credit for winning that 2008 Stanley Cup with the Red Wings, and he coached that team, and he deserves that cup. But when you look at what he's done throughout his career, and especially recently, it's really not all that impressive. He's a great regular season coach. There is no doubt about that. Mike Babcock teams are almost always very good in the regular season. But if you're talking about an all-time coach, a legendary coach, a generational coach, the regular season really doesn't matter a whole lot. It's what you do in the playoffs, and it's winning championships that matter. And Mike Babcock has not been able to do that. In fact, Mike Babcock has not been past the second round of the playoffs since 2009, when the Red Wings lost the Stanley Cup to Pittsburgh. And it's been just a history of first and second round exits really for the past 10 years now with Mike Babcock coached teams, Detroit and Toronto. It really hasn't changed. But here's what we're looking at here, and you'll start to understand that, where I'm coming from with this. Mike Babcock has coached 1,278 NHL games. He has 691 wins in the regular season, 408 losses, and 179. I combined OT losses and ties because pre-lockout it was ties, post-lockout it's overtime losses. I just threw them together for the number. That's really not important. He has 691 career regular season wins. Okay, I'm not saying he's not a good coach. He clearly can win games and is a good coach. In the playoffs, he's coached 164 career playoff games. He has 90 wins and 74 losses. He's won one Stanley Cup, 2008, with the Red Wings. He's lost two Stanley Cups. One his first year with Anaheim in 2002-2003. They lost to the Devils. And again in 2009 with Detroit, they made it to the Cup Finals but lost to the Penguins. He's only won one cup, yet he gets talked about like he's this generation's Scotty Bowman, which clearly is not the case. And when you look at his recent playoff history from 2010 on, if you look at his recent playoff history, it's really not even that good. With the Detroit Red Wings in 2010, he lost in the second round. In 2011, still with the Detroit Red Wings, second round loss. 2012, out in the first round. 2013, out in the second round. 2014, out in the first round. 2015, out in the first round again. Then he sees that the Red Wings are a sinking ship. He jumps off and goes to Toronto. And I don't blame him for that. The Red Wings, their 25 years of dominance was coming to an end. This was a team that needed a rebuild. They were not going to be a Stanley Cup contender again anytime soon. You had their star players starting to age by 2015, and you could see the writing on the wall with the Red Wings that things were going downhill and downhill fast. So Babcock does what a smart person would do, and he jumps ship. And he goes from the sinking Red Wings to the upstart Toronto Maple Leafs, who had been terrible for years before, could never get any traction going, and with developing a winning team. And he goes to a team that is a really bad last place Maple Leafs team, and he is going to be there to build this team up. And he gets brought into Toronto to take this team from a bottom feeder to a Stanley Cup level team. So 2015-16 is his first year with the Maple Leafs. 2016, they do not qualify for the playoffs, and that was to be expected. They were a last-place team. But they're getting draft picks. They're getting young prospects. They're starting to build up the young core of this team. 2017, they make the playoffs, and they lose in the first round. All right, they finally made the playoffs. They're significantly better than they have been, and things are starting to look upwards for the Maple Leafs. 2018, they make the playoffs. They lose in the first round again. Then now again this year, they make the playoffs again. And I think by this year, fans were really hoping and expecting to see some significant improvement. But once again, in 2019, the Toronto Maple Leafs are out in the first round. Once again. And this, I think this year, I've seen more people start jumping towards my side of the argument here. I've seen a lot more comments about Babcock being overrated, a lot more negativity surrounding Mike Babcock's name. I think Toronto fans are, quite frankly, getting impatient with the playoff losses. And when you look at it, Mike Babcock, as a coach, has not been out of the first round since 2013. It's now 2019, so 2013 was 6 years ago, was the last time he was even out of the first round of the playoffs. Now, I'm not saying Mike Babcock is a bad head coach, because he's not. But what I'm really trying to get at here is that the hype around the name Mike Babcock, the hype is so high, and so many people have this high opinion of him, like he is this legendary all-time great coach. But the results don't live up to that hype. They just don't live up to it at all. One Stanley Cup, hasn't been out of the first round in 6 years, hasn't been out of the second round since 2009. This is a what have you done for me lately type league where you need to win, and you need to, you need to be winning now, and he is not. He isn't winning in the playoffs. Yes, they've had some great regular seasons. Babcock has had some great regular seasons, 50-win teams, high 40-win teams. If you're going to be a legend, if you're going to be an all-time great, you need to win championships. Now, that especially with coaching. Players, there obviously are all-time great players who have never won a Stanley Cup. Jerome McGinley immediately comes to mind. One player cannot win a Stanley Cup. One coach cannot win the team a Stanley Cup. You need the GM, the coach, and the players to all come together. All of them need to be successful to win a cup. There's no doubt about that. So it's unfair to say, to put all the blame on the coach when a team doesn't win, because there's also a GM building the team and building the roster. The problem could be there. And there's also the players who need to play at the level that they're expected to, and that could be a problem there. And it's also unfair to give all the praise to the coach when they do win a cup, because there are players that play well, and there's a GM who built that team. So you can never put a Stanley Cup or not a Stanley Cup all on one person. It's just the hype. It's the hype surrounding Babcock. It's the way Pierre Maguire, gets almost has to change his pants after he talks about Mike Babcock on NBC broadcast, because he's so in love with Mike Babcock. And It seems like it's been fans, it's been media. Everyone just thinks and talks about Mike Babcock like he's this incredible, untouchable figure who is like the Wayne Gretzky of NHL coaching. And when you look at his results and you look at the numbers, that is just not the case. And that is exactly what the point I'm trying to make here. He is overrated. His hype, his results do not match his hype. He was brought to Toronto like he was going to be a franchise savior. That hasn't been the case. They've been out in the first round every year he's made the playoffs with the Maple Leafs. At what point here do you have to start to look at it and go, you know what? Maybe he is overrated. Maybe he's not this untouchable hockey god that so many people think he is. Because when I look at it, he isn't. And I've thought this for a little while now, and I think this year was really the icing on the cake that Mike Babcock is overrated. And when I think that, when I look at the way he's talked about, I think more people are starting to catch on to that. And I know that his patience of Toronto fans is starting to run thin with him. There was talk about him possibly being let go after they lost again in the first round to Boston this year. And that's, obviously Toronto has come out and said that Babcock is the coach for the start of next year. They did not guarantee him the full season next year. They said he is the coach for the start of next year. If next season goes bad, he could very well be out. And I think more fans are losing their patience with him. More fans are starting to think that, maybe he isn't this all-time great that people think he is. And that, maybe he is a little bit overrated. And I think we're starting to see more and more of that. And I think that they're right. I really do. And I know there's going to be I'm sure there's plenty of Babcock lovers out there who think he is the greatest coach in NHL history and should be, given his own room in the Hockey Hall of Fame. But when you actually look at the results, when you look at his playoff results, especially in recent history like I have right here, I don't see it. It's not there. It's first round exits. It's second round exits. It's one career Stanley Cup win. It's not that great. It really isn't that great. And I think there's no doubt that he's a good hockey coach. And there's no doubt that he's been a successful NHL coach. He has 691 career wins. He will get his 700th win next year. But is he really a legendary coach? I don't think so. Is he an all-time great? Does he belong on the elite pedestal of the greatest coaches of all time? No. He has one Stanley Cup. One Stanley Cup. And it's not like he's only coached one good team either. I mean, he had, plenty of chances in Detroit to win multiple cups. And I wouldn't say Toronto has ever been a cup-level team with him at the helm in the last few years, but you would have thought they would have at least, if he's as great of a coach as everyone says he is, you would have thought they would have at least gotten out of the first round once. And they haven't done it. In 4 years with the Maple Leafs, he has 3 first-round exits and 1 did not make the playoffs. That's not legendary to me. That's not a franchise savior. That's not a hockey god. So when Pierre Maguire gets his pants all bunched up and he needs to change his shorts after he does an interview with Mike Babcock, I think that those people need to tone it down. And those people need to just face the facts that this guy, yes, he's a good coach, but he's not the hockey legend that you all make him out to be. His team's just... And I don't know, if is he that great of a coach? He seems to get out coached plenty of times, and especially in the playoffs. Whether it's matchups or whether it's strategy, he's been out coached plenty of times. And when you look at someone like Joel Quenneville, who has 3 Stanley Cups since 2010, Joel Quenneville is a better coach than Mike Babcock. Mike Babcock is not the best coach in the NHL. Joel Quenneville, I think, is. I think Barry Trotz is a better coach than Mike Babcock. If I was starting a NHL team right now and I had my pick of anybody I wanted to coach, there are guys I would pick before Mike Babcock. Joel Quenneville and Barry Trotz are ahead of him without a doubt in my mind. That wouldn't even be a discussion. Those two are ahead of him. After that, you would put Babcock in that, maybe after that in that conversation, but so you'd also have Peter Laviolette in there. I think he's a tremendous NHL coach. Mike Sullivan, back-to-back Stanley Cups with the Penguins. He's got to be in there. And I think, there are other guys in there as well. But I don't put Mike Babcock on this huge pedestal that so many people have him on. And I think that's my point here, and my overall point is not that he's not a good coach, because he is. And the numbers show that. He's got a winning record in the playoffs. He's got almost 700 career wins. He is a Stanley Cup champion. But he's not at the level that the hype brings him up to be. He is not the level of coach that he is hyped up to be by the media, by fans, by people around hockey. He just isn't. He has one Stanley Cup, and he's consistently out in the first two rounds of the playoffs, really for the past 10 years. So that's my opinion on that. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.